Today we have Yu Suzuki. He's in town to receive the Pioneer Award tonight for his arcade games and his consumer games over the years. This is actually his first talk in the US ever, so I'm going to help out by asking him some questions. But if you have a piece of paper, it would be very nice if during the first 15 minutes of the talk you could just write down a question and raise your hand, and one of the interns will come and get the question from you and hand me the list of them. It's a little disruptive to do that, I know, so we'll just keep it to the first 15 minutes for those questions. And I'll start throwing in your questions after the first 15 minutes. So are we on now? We could be on. We're on. We are indeed on. So my first question is, Yu-san, why is it called Space Harrier if there's no Harrier in it? A Harrier is a British fighter jet that can take off vertically?
So, I
believe it's French. I believe it's French.
French,
yeah.
Sorry.
In the beginning, I think that was a airplane project that we were planning for. We had 100 pages to fill. It wasn't my own plan or program. But the technology at that time, for the hardware, it was too difficult. And I tried to rewrite the whole program, and I kept the name. That's why.
So I heard something different. I heard that you actually finished the game with a fighter in it and put it on location to see what the earnings were. And then somebody had the idea, perhaps you, to replace the fighter with a human being and add a better character element to the game. And the game was retested and had significally higher income.
Is this true?
Is this true?
This is true.
Yeah.
It's going to be embarrassing if I remember these days better than Suzuki-san.
Well, there are too many patterns, if it is airplane, the memory size has to be very large. We couldn't do it, so, pattern change is very limited when you fly a human. That's why it was a change.
I understand you have pictures from your very first game here today? Championship boxing?
So, Sega no SG
right, SG-1000 Segas. That was my. Is this it? No.
Mark III no mae no GameCube. So this is the game machine before the Master System.
Doesn't move. What's wrong? Come on.
Oh. Good. すごい。これが最初に僕が作ったゲームで。懐かしい。
Did you do your artwork too?
絵も描きました。
This was the sound that I could make. That was the only sound. And I can't get Mr. Suzuki's sound because the screen sound is too large, interpreter having hard time.
Okay.
All right, so that was a consumer game, because you started out making consumer games at Sega, and then from 1984, you moved to Kono. Is that correct? 業務に移しました。1980年ですね。
コンシューマーで作ったんだけど、
Yes, I was making it for consumers. At that time, it was a good one.
筐体に入れて、
So we put it into
スイ
a
ッチをこ コントローラーから持ってきて
and took out the switch from the
業務用の空間に
controller.
入れて売りましたこれ
And we put it in that
元々はコンシューマー
box.
ゲーム作ってたんです
So originally it was a consumer
に
game.
なりましたしね。
なりま
And
したなりました
it became
中身は SG1000
じゃあゲームじゃなくて
SC1000 was in box.
業務用の仕事に入りました。
あはいはい
So you became not a consumer but business.
最
What
初は
was
ち
the
っちゃいのや
trigger?
って
I did a very small one in the beginning, and it was successful.
And that
So I was
first
told to try a
arcade
big
game, was
one.
that Space Harrier or Outrun? Sorry, or Hang On.
ハンゴン
Hang On.
Hang on was the
こ
first.
れで最初に音楽がゲームに入ったんですね曲が
We had the
I remember
music
back in the day, we could
in the
not
game.
believe
That was the
quality
first
of these
time.
graphics.
うん
Wow.
相当シンプルなゲームです
And where did the idea of the player being the controls come from? あの自分の体を使って操作してるでしょ。
そうそうそうそう
それを考えはどこから来ましたか？
これはなんか
Well,
最初はモーター
in
を
the
使
beginning,
って
I used the motor
ジャイロにして
and made it a gyro.
こうアクセルひねるとこう
And
ぐーっと
if
動くように
you
したかったんですけ
put
ど
on the axle, then you
高い
moved
から
on.
セガがダメっ
But
て
it was too expensive, and Sega said no.
わかりました。All right. So I guess we're going to jump around from time to time today. That's probably a little more interesting than just going through the history in sequence. So I worked with in the same building as Suzuki-san for 3 years. He's actually a very good friend. I was the only Westerner in product development in Sega in the late 80s. And so I got to be around for all of these games. And one of the things I remember is Virtua Racing.
バーチャルレーシング
Yes, Suzuki-san showed me the pit. Can you show them the pit scene
ピッチ OK
for Virtua Racing? And he said, here's my next game.
ピッチねちょっと待ってね
Just give me a time.
Oh, don't close it.
いやこれピットだなちょっと遅いね
Slow, isn't it?
なうん
じゃあ言葉で説明できますか？
Why don't you explain it in English? I mean,
バー
by
チャルレー
words.
シングを
Virtual racing, when I made that,
ピットシーンがあって
pit scene, of course,
僕
there
は
was a pit scene.
人を動かして
And I wanted to move people,
なんか
get the people
3D の
to
ゲームを
move
作りたかったから
and to do a 3D game.
バーチャルファイターのために
And for the virtual
バーチャルレーシン
fighter,
グのピットクルーで
I used the virtual racing pit crew simulation for the virtual fighter. Did I get it? Am I getting it?
こういう人は人を動かす 3D で人を動かす練習を
I was trying to practice moving people by
And then
three
really
dimension.
The next game was Virtua Fighter, and
Yeah.
you use this technology?
いやいや
Right.
And it looked, Virtua Fighter 1 was really primitive looking, with characters that were just made from flat shaded polygons. But Virtua Fighter 2 actually had textures and things in the characters, which I think was a first for the industry. How did you go about developing that hardware? 2はね、テクスチャーがなかったでしょ、その時まで。
2がテクスチャーなかった
なぜそれが可能ですか？
How did you make the texture possible?
何年だったかな
I forgot what year it was.
92
Maybe
ぐらい
something
か
like
な
92,
ソ連
1992.
が
The Soviet
ソ
Union
ビエト連邦が崩
dissolved.
壊して
Well, that was in 91.
なんか軍事用の技術が
And the
民間と
military
一緒にやん
technology
なくちゃいけなくなって
had to be
それで
combined with the private industrial technology. And flat shading was all I could do with Virtua Fighter 1. But texture mapping technology was my dream, and I was looking for it. And military simulation companies were the only ones that had those technology. And GE Aerospace, I visited that in the United States, and asked if I can't use that technology for the private, industrial sort of game machine, and everybody said you can't ever get that. But I was lucky the Soviet Union dissolved, and the military technology was to be shared with the private simulation company.
Told you they could do it, but it would cost $2 million a machine.
Right. The flight simulator at that time, when I asked how much it would cost, and that was $3.2 billion. How much for tips? Haven't sold it, so there's no price for tips. So I said, how much? And the answer was $2 million. The president of Sega asked for 5,000 yen. $50. Sell it to me for $50. There's a huge gap. But Sega reduced the cost of chip with mass production. And in the final analysis, it did become $50 a tip. Chip. And then 3D became part of the scene, accelerated, and it became very popular throughout the industry.
So, you're talking about Hayao Nakayama, who was the president who negotiated that? Yeah. So, I understand he put a lot of pressure on you guys to make your games quickly. And as soon as it looked like the game was ready, he'd sell it. だからできたと思っていたら、出した。
中山さん、
Mr. Nakayama, yeah.
その時の社長の
The
中山さん
president
は
was
やっぱ
Mr.
り
Nakayama at that
絵が
time,
綺
as
麗
you
だ
say.
とゲームができてると思うん
And
で
when he sees a lovely picture, he says the
時々
game's
こう見に
completed.
来るんですね。こう
And he comes to a development room from time to time.
絵が綺麗だと
And when he sees a beautiful picture, put that on the market immediately.
机の下にボタンをつけて
And so I had a button under the
ボ
table.
タンを押すと
When I pushed the button,
映像がガチャガチャって壊れるように
and I destroyed the
カラーアラー
picture.
ムっていうのがあって
And I call it the color
カラーを
alarm,
全部
you
いじる
see.
と
And if you touch on the
ゲームを
colors,
作ることはできるけど
you
見
can
た感
create
じはぐちゃぐちゃになるから
the
わ
game,
かん
but
なくなって
it looks very,
いつもこう
destructive.
スイッチをピュッと押して
So I always push the switch when Mr. Nakayama was in.
アフターバーナーの時はもうやってたんですけど
I was
バレ
doing
て
that after burner,
僕いない
but
時に
he
来ちゃっ
found it out because he came to the room when I wasn't there.
Yeah,
Nobody played the trick.
Why was it Afterburner 2?
Afterburner 2
There is no Afterburner 1. There is only Afterburner 2.
セガが確か
I think at that time, as I recall, Sega was going to
アフターバーナー2の
at that time
こう
going to list the companies or
毎
IPO,
年頑張ってる時で
and Sega was trying every year to go for IPO.
1を出さないと早く
And
出さないと
if we didn't put the Afterburner 1
上場できないっ
quickly,
て言われたんで
and
す
we were told that we won't be
Yeah.
listed, we can't do our
チューニング
IPO.
が全然できないから
And tuning couldn't be
約
done
束して
at
もらっ
all.
て1を出した後無
So-
料で2にチェンジしてくだ
After
さいっていう
1, I have contracted and made him promise with the president that after 1, let me have the 2 immediately. So I just got 1.
Right?
6週間
The
でした
one
っけ
made the fiscal year. Yeah.
1でその年が稼げたわけですね。
30億円ぐらい足りなかった確か
I think we were short by 3 billion yen or
All right.
something.
Studio 128. So about a year after I joined you in Tokyo, you moved out of our building. and you went and made your own building. You rented an apartment.
Yeah.
I remember going to this dark, dirty place with about 13 programmers and one poor lady making tea for you, where you were making Afterburner. Why did you leave the main building?
セガにいるとなんか
If you stayed in
遅刻すると怒られるんですね。
Sega, if I'm not on
朝遅く来
time,
ると
you know, I come late in the morning, they'll scold you. They have nasty things to say.
朝が遅いと
And
夜
I'm
遅
not
くまで
good
や
at-
ってて夜泊まってやっ
You
て
know,
も
I
朝
worked
が遅いとこう
late at night and I stayed
給料がカ
there.
ットされる。
But when I show up late,
what was the
my
deadline for coming in the
salary will be
morning?
cut.
8:30
8:30 was the deadline in the morning.
でそれだともうなんかこうみんなが仕事しにくいと思って
And I
違うオフ
thought,
ィス
you
に
know, I better move out to a
こうしたら
different office
文句言われ
because I wasn't very good for the others.
I heard the
there.
rumor is it was called AM2 because the only time you were all there was 2 a.m. Right, so you did Afterburner there. Let's talk about R360. Were you still in that building in R360? Or had you moved?
R60 は
I'd like to talk about the near-death experiences.
これ
Yeah.
これが
Yeah. So, I don't know how wide the distribution was in the States, but the cabinet would rotate completely around. So you'd be suspended upside down within the cabinet. Can you tell them about the prototype you made for this, proof of concept?
これを最初に作った時は
When I
なんか
first
こう
made that,
やっぱりセガのメカトロニクスの部隊が
Sega
地球を待ってるわけ
Megatronics
ですかね
troops
こう2つの軸のこう回
had
る
two axes, you know, you have a two
そういう
axes.
このタイプのものを最
And
後
this
やりた
type
かっ
of
た
thing is what
最終目標で。で
was our final
その
objective and we wanted to do, and we wanted to come up a sample
試作品
of
試
it.
作品ができたから乗ってくれって言われて
When the sample was
行っ
made,
たら
I was
大きな
asked
こ
to
う
get on it. And I went there to find that it was an electrical large
そ
reel,
のその大きなこう
and
リ
on
ー
that
ルのとこに椅子
reel
があって
there was a chair.
でその椅子に僕が座って
And I was to sit on that
でこう
chair,
縛
on
ら
that
れて
huge reel. I was tied down onto that
縛ら
chair.
れてでみんなでうわーって思って
And everybody rotated that wheel. Good
で、これ
Lord.
どこでやってた？
これは5階建てのビルの
It was a 5-story
屋上でやって
building
たから
and it was on the
そこ
roof. I was scared.
それで何食事はしてくるなって言われて
And I was told not to eat, not to come eat. You know, I mean, don't have meal before
And then,
I sit on the wheel.
During development, of course, you couldn't play the game by yourself. 絶対に一人でやるな
あそうそう
と言って
そう、
たでしょ。
これは
Right.
危険だから
Because
一
it's
人で
dangerous, right?
プログラミングするなっていう指示
Don't
をしてたん
program
ですけ
it
ど
alone.
あの
That was the
それを
instruction.
破った、僕じゃないけど
But
僕
it
の部
wasn't
下が
me,
破って
but
プ
my
ログラムの
subordinate
人がこれを
Did it alone.
やってたら
Didn't follow the
セーフティーロ
rule.
ックが外れなくなって
And the safety lock didn't.
こうなってもずーっとこう
And he stayed in that position because the safety
その人
lock
それ朝みんな車で
till the next day he was, you know, upside down until the
そ
next
れでセー
morning
フティーロ
people
ックが
became.
外れなくて
And because the safety lock
で行ったら面白いか
didn't,
ら
you know.
助けないで
And so nobody
みんな呼んできて
nobody want to save him out, you know. He was a showpiece. So he had to hang on till everybody came and saw him in that way.
面白いですね
All right. Did we get any questions from the audience? Anybody write anything down? Because I can start. If you can write them down, because it's going to be easier, I can pick the couple great ones. And we'll go to the microphones at the end. So that's the stack. Let's go with one question. Thank you. Thank you. Well, why don't we take the next 10 minutes anyway, and if you can write down and raise your hand, and one of the hardworking interns will bring it up. And I'll go with like 3 more canned questions until then. So let's talk about a failure. Do you have any of those? 失敗作、
失敗作
ありますか？
ありますあります。失敗作もちょっと書けますね、ちょっとね。
アメリカへ来なかったものですね、サイファイ。
サイファイっていう2004年にサイファイっていうゲームを作って発売されなかった。
We created the piece in 2004, but it's a touch panel game, and it did not make it to the market.
So I'm just making the stack of when is Shenmue 3 coming out here, and this is everything else here. Sorry, this is all Shenmue 3. If you can't make the game, can you at least finish the story?
これ
じゃあまずはサイファイの話しましょう。
First, let's talk about sci-fi. Well,
全部全てタッチ
so
パネルで
everything was touch panel
戦う
playable, and it was a fighting game. And Tom Cruise,
マイノリティリポートっていう映画
Minority
があって
Report was the
その映画で
film that Tom Cruise was
こんなことやっ
on
て
that,
て
and then he was doing
あの姿を
something like
ゲ
this.
ームにしたかったん
And
ですよ
that image I wanted
これ作って
to introduce into the game, and
で
so I
発売に
created
ならな
it.
かったですね
But it didn't come to the market. It didn't launch. Why was it? Why do you think it didn't make to the market?
人差し指
Well,
がこ
The index finger,
う熱くなって焦げた
it became so hot, and you were burning your finger.
手袋をす
So
ればよかったかも
maybe if you wear like a glove, maybe it could help you.
DS
You could have saved your finger. And the DS, you use a pen. Then maybe if you
Kinect
use a
なら大丈夫
pen, maybe it's okay. Kinect would be okay.
Right. How about Shenmue? Let's talk about Shenmue 1.
うん、
So why make Shenmue? どうしてもともとそのゲームを作ろうと
Why did you, to begin with, why did you think about creating
セ
Shenmue?
ガがドリームキャスト
Sega
を
We,
いつだったかな
when was it? We had a
ドリームキャス
Dreamcast,
トがねシェム1か
Shenmue 1 maybe. We worked with them.
セガがドリームキャストっていうそのプラットフォームを作るときにセガが
created the
キラー
Dreamcast,
タイ
and
トル
then
が
killer
必要だ
title. We needed to have a killer title for Sega with the Dreamcast. And the Dreamcast killer title, what kind of games we need, we talked about that. And RPG big title,
セガ必要ってなって
we thought probably we should come up with that by Sega.
誰もやる人がいなかったの
But no one was playing
コンシューマーの
コンシューマーの方とか
consumer,
ビッグタイトルだから
and
責任
because
も
this is a big title. Mature Fighter RPG, were you talking about? Yes, it was in the
最初は
beginning.
タイトルの名前を
So
使っ
the
てバーチャ
title
ルファイターの
Virtual Fighter Akira
でしたね
was the
So
character
why did you
that,
change that?
that we used.
途中から企画が
Well, from
ア
the
キラを使わ
beginning,
なくてもニュータイトルでいけ
The
るかな
new
と
title
思って
without using Akira, probably we will be able to go for it, and
So
that's why we
talked
changed
last
it.
week, and he says that the $70 million that Sega said that cost was a lie, and that it was only
47ミリオンダラー
only 47.
Only 47 million. Well, not only.
Why did it cost $47 million in 1996? 1999 to make that game?
ドリームキャスト1999
1999.
うん
It's a lot of money.
全部損失はしてない
Well, it was not the entire loss. I don't
どこに
think.
使いました
Where did you spend it?
開発とか
For
宣伝とか
development and the marketing commercialization. Where did we spend the money?
I remember
Well,
going and playing this game, and you'd go and it'd be a whole city. And
Yeah.
whatever house you wanted to go in, you had a team of artists modeling the interior of like 900 houses in a city. Because one of the things you were trying to do was create, I guess, a living world for this.
部屋が
部屋
はジェネレーションなんで計
well,
算で全部
rooms.
作っちゃった。
Well, we created rooms by
Generator
calculation, and we used the generators.
一個一個作ってない。
So it was not created. Each individual
Ultimately
house was not
this
created.
success
We used a
that you're evoking,
generator.
There are so many new things in it. But do you have any feeling about what worked and what didn't work?
シェムでなん
はい、うまくいったところとうまくいかなかったところとか。
That's right. Success areas and failed areas with Shenmue, and why
シェムでうまく
the
いかなか
painful
ったの
areas.
は
Well,
スタッフがたくさんいて
we had so many staff
オーバーコントロー
people,
ルに
and
なっちゃっ
it
た
was
ことかな
kind of out of control or over
あと
control.
はラーメン
And
が時間経て
also,
ば伸びるんだけど
noodles
それができ
become
ない
fat. We couldn't do that.
Wow, that is a Japanese expression. All right. Well, okay. I'll ask it. Shenmue 3, when?
すごいシンプルだね
作りますか？
いや作りたいですよ
Are you going to make it? Yes, of course we
Type.
want to make. We want to make it. Does that mean you are not going to make it?
作る環境が整えば
Well,
ね
if the environment is ready to create it, well, at least you probably need 200.
多分
200 people will buy the
スポン
product
サーが
at
つけば
least.
作れる
Well, if there's a sponsor,
He
big
needs
sponsor,
money.
they can.
All right. So some questions from the audience.
いやマーク多分ね
Well, Mark
セガは
probably
作らせてくれるんじゃないか
Sega, I think, is going to let me make it.
訳さないの
じゃあ作ってください。
バジェ
Then
ットの
please
問題
create
だ
it.
け
I think it's just up to the budget.
なら安く作ってください。
安く作る
Then please create it in an
So,
inexpensive
for your
way.
psychic fighting game, why psychic? Where did the inspiration for that come from? sci-fi はね、なんですよ。
Talking about
超
sci-fi,
能力か何か
the
を使って戦ったとかそういうでしょ
superpower was used to fight,
その考えは
right?
どこから
And so
来ま
that
した
idea, where did you come up with the idea to use
や
a
っぱり
power,
小さい時に見
superpower?
た
Well, when I was
日本のアニメーショ
little,
ン
the Japanese
があって
animation
そういうの
that I
そういう超能
so
力好き
when
だ
I
ったん
was
ですよ
little and I was inspired with the superpower
今
that
なんか
the
アメリカ
animation
の
was
ヒーローズとか
using
超能
the
力のやつ
American hero and also superpower.
ね
I think there are a lot of
ああいうのが好きだったの昔から
things they use.
でおかげでうまくいったそれとも格闘ゲームだ
supernatural
と本当に
power
手
or
と足で戦
superhuman
わなくて
ability.
はならない
So
と思い
with
ま
that
す。
ability, do you feel like
もう
people have to fight?
遊びはもっとシンプルに
Well, I
し
think the
た
play-
方がいいんじゃないかと思ってたから
I think it's better
バ
to
チャバ
make
チャ
it
ちょっと
simple.
難しくなって
Virtual Fighter, it was a little
Virtual Fighter
complicated and
は操作が難しいから
difficult. I think the
もっとシンプルに
operation is a little
した方がいい
difficult, challenging. So I think it's better probably make it simpler. So at least Virtual Fighter 3, that was complicated. So reset button, probably you can make it simplify. Maybe we can do it like this and that. So what was your learning point when you make it again? Are you going to use a superhuman power, or are you going to use the hands or
超能力
legs? Well, if I have an opportunity again, AI, artificial intelligence, probably we want to utilize that more. And so play is simple, but we can probably feel comfortable
All right,
playing
totally
that.
different direction. You've gone
And it's a-
independent. Congratulations. So last year, Suzuki-san started his new company.
Mr. Suzuki created a new company last year.
Which I understand is very small. 5 people? 10 people?
Yeah, now it's 7 people.
7 people? Yeah. What kind of person are you looking for?
So I'm looking for
As employee.
Employee?
はい。
I'm looking for so good.
This may be employee number 8.
Seriously, yes, I'm looking for a server programmer.
Server program, right? Because you're doing social network games.
Yeah,
is
yeah,
that
yeah,
right?
yeah. Yes, yes.
So how do you combine Suzuki U style with server network games? Are they 3D?
Now is small company. The budget is small, and so 今はまだステップですね。ステップ。
Well, it's just
So
a
the first
step. The first step.
Yes, yes, yes.
Is Suzuki U style Farmville?
まあ成功したらどんどんこう。
When I become
Second step.
successful, then we'll go on to the second step.
Maybe third step.
Third step.
Three.
So when you were making the titles at Sega, did you ever have difficulty getting approval for them? だから hang on の後
Hang on
の後ゲーム作りたかった時に
You wanted to create the hang-on and beyond. Was it difficult to get an approval? Was it tough? That is a question.
それとも何でも大丈夫
Or anything you wanted to create, did the company let you make it? Well, the president,
社長が OK で
if president said okay,
作れたんです
then
ね。
it was possible to make the game.
社長が欲しそうなものを企画
So
を書いてた。
I was creating a plan,
Yeah,
planning paper where the president would approve easily. So you wanted to, you needed to have an approval, this stamp of approval. For example, Mr. Nakayama wanted to have a fighting game.
例えばバーチャルファイターの時はですね、
For example, in case of Virtual Fighter, Street Fighter by Capcom, he was saying, "Oh, that's excellent, that's great." And so at Sega, why don't we create a fighting game? Then he said, "Okay."
社長の欲しがるものを
So
企
whatever
画すると
Mr. Nakayama wanted to create, then if he come up with a plan to go for it, then we were approved.
企画書を書いたことがある、デザインまで、アートワークまで
The designer and
とことがあるでしょ
artwork,
どこまで
you
企画の方
also
に入
were
ってましたか
involved.
例えば
How
バーチャルファイタ
extent
ーとかデイトーナとか
were you involved in the
virtual
planning,
racing?
virtual fight, virtual racing?
まあここに書いて
What
あ
extent
るやつ
did you
は企画はほとんど自分
Get
で
involved. These
やってますね。
items that are listed here,
プロ
I
デュー
was
スっ
the
て PRD って書いてあるのはプロデュ
person
ー
who
ス
was
でプロデュースのやつ
involved
に
in
ついては
planning. PRD
プログラム
meaning
コードは書い
producing.
てない。
That means I did not write the program coding.
で最後の質
Program
問ですけど、
So this is
ほ
the
とんど
last
はね
question.
3D のゲームですね。
Almost all the games
他
are
の人より
3D.
早く出していた。
And
いろんな
you
3D
came up
ゲーム
with the 3D games to the market
Was that your original
much earlier than
intent?
other people.
もともと 3D ゲームを作りたく
So
てこのゲー
originally,
ムを
did
作り
you
ま
want
し
to
た
create a 3D game,
それとも例え
or
ばこのゲームを考え
you
て
wanted
て
to have this
3D
game
3D
and
じゃないと
then that game had to be 3D. Well, from the beginning, I wanted to create a 3D game. When I was in university,
建築の勉強をしてたので
I was studying
家をアーキ
3D
テクチャ
construction.
作る
And so with the 3D, I was researching how to create a 3D house. So when I entered Sega, I wanted to do something
So
to
why
do
don't we
with
go to the
3D.
microphones? We've got about 15 minutes, and I'm sure you have questions.
Hello. So I have a question back in the day. Why do you think the NES beat out the Sega Master System when it was technically a better system with better games? The Sega was.
なぜ NES が勝ったっていう技術的にマスターシステムが進んでるけど
Master System was
NES の sales が
better,
かな
but
り大きかった。
NES
NES の
sales.
マスターシステムマーク3の話です。
マーク3の話
Mark
Mark
3.
III
Oh, you're in
が
Mark 3. Mark 3
多
lost,
分
right?
市場占有率はね 92% と 4%
92% and 4%
でなぜ NES が
difference.
勝ちましたか
Why did NES win, do you think?
わからない。
Don't
コメン
know.
ト言ってください。
Don't know.
僕マーク3と何
What was it?
NES, Nintendo, no.
Nintendo's.
Nintendo のゲーム。
Oh, Nintendo's game. Yeah.
このソフトが任天堂の方が
I
良かった
think software must have been better for Nintendo.
僕ずっと業務用だったからね、
I
あんま
was
りその
doing
辺詳しくないんだな。
Arcade,
Yeah.
so I don't know very much. If you have good software,
じゃあ
hardware is going to sell.
良いゲーム作ってなかったと言ってますか今
Nakayoshi-san wasn't
彼
making
はいい
good
ゲーム
film.
少なかったんじゃないかな。
But he didn't make very many, I don't think, good games.
Is that a good enough answer? I hope so. Next question, maybe we'll go to the other side of the room.
All right. Digital Dance Mix is a very sort of distinctly kind of different project in relation to the other things that you've worked on. And some people say it's sort of a test as far as trying to push the Saturn hardware as far as how complex a polygonal model you could make. What was sort of the idea behind that project, and how'd you go about teaming up with Nami Amuro to work on that?
わかりますか？デジタルダンスミックスはね、他のゲームに比べると全然違う方向に行ってます。だからどのような考えでしたか？
ダンスの
Well,
ゲームが
the dance game,
流行るんじゃないかなと。
I
当時ちょっ
felt
と思っ
that
たんですよ
in those days it's going to take off. People's going to want
これ
to
から
do
ダン
that.
スが
Dance is
流
going
行ると思っ
to
て、
be the
で
major
デジタルダンスミックスの中に
within the digital
なん
dance
かこうミニ
mix.
ゲームを入れて、
I wanted to
でその
install a mini
がこう上
game,
からこう
and the
降りて
mini
きて
game
タイミング
is to
ピョン
come
ピョン
down
叩いて
and
今の
like what you have today,
とそっくり
the sound type game. I had that in mind. The mini game to come down and
あれからあれ
chop
が
chop,
最初かもしれない
and I think that was the first
最
idea.
後だったでしょ？
And it was the last one, right?
作りませんでしたか？
Not the first. It was the first
僕
and
あ
the
んま
last.
り続けて同じゲーム作らない
I don't go for the version after the same game. I get the bored after I make one game, so I go on to something else. You should have continued with
Let's
that.
go to the other side of the room. There are just two microphones here, right? I can't really see you out there.
あまり見えません。
let's go to the other side.
Hi, Mr. Suzuki. Sega has made a lot of brilliant games, but very few of them sold very well. Like Virtua Fighter was the only one that sold over 2 million on Sega Saturn, and at the end, Sega just quit the console market in early 2002. So I just wonder what your opinion is on this situation.
So you're talking about the consoles not going particularly well.
All the console titles, they got very good quality and they got good critical acclaim, but they just didn't sell very well.
クオリティが高かったけどよく売れませんでした。コンシューマーのも。それはなぜだって思いますか？
いつ頃
コンシューマー、Saturn to Dreamcast.
Now you're talking about.
Like Virtua Fighter 2 was the only one that sold over 2 million.
ミリオン
そうです。唯一200万本以上売れたタイトルは Virtua Fighter 2だけでした。
なんでかな
I don't know why. Wonder why.
わかんないな
I don't know.
僕は業務用だったからなあんまりわかんない
Because I was doing arcade games, so
I'm guessing you weren't looking at the sales too much.
あまり
No.
気に
Okay, any question?
I've got two actually, if that's okay.
Sure.
First of all, I would like to know what he thinks about the direction Osaki-san and Kataoka-san have taken the Virtua Fighter series.
So this is for Virtua Fighter, which ones?
The ones made after you left.
5.
はい
どう思いますか？
Oh yeah.
バーチャファイターっていうのが少しブランドになってるので
Virtua Fighter has become a brand. Kataoka and Ozuki took up the series, continue with the games,
いいことだ
and I think that's a good thing.
と思って
I really think it's a good
僕
thing.
自体はちょっと違うゲー
For
ムを
myself,
作りたい
I want to make something different.
同じ種類のものを続けてやる
I
よ
don't
りは
want to continue the same
いつも新しいものを
games in
やっていたい
series. I always want to be
ただ
creating
シ
new
リーズを
games.
きちっと作っていくっていう
But I
ことも
think
大事なの
it
で
is
彼らが作って
important
くれたことはすごく
to have a series of games. It's good that they're doing
ちょっ
that.
と プレイが難しす
But
ぎ
the
るかな。
play
で
is
もっと
getting too
ライトユーザ
difficult.
ーが遊べるよう
I
に
think it should be that light users can have fun.
ちょっとゲームが少しずつ難
I
しくなって
think
いってる
games
の
becoming
で
more difficult little by little.
また少しずつ簡単に
I
遊べ
think
るよ
it
うに
should
した方がいい。
go easy a little by little
Let's go
for
to
light
the
players
other
to play.
side.
Games like Hang On and Outrun seem to have a real sense of speed, like the first 3D games that felt fast. Was that a goal? Did you have any other goals for those titles?
いやすごいスピード感がありました。アウトランとか。でそれはメインが開発するときメインの目的でしたか、そのスピード感。
スピード感はね、
The sense of
ポリ
speed,
ゴンが
polygon,
3D 最初のやつはポリゴンっていう
the
ので動いて
first
3D
uh, 3D was
ちょっとしか出ない
polygon, and polygon was
ポリゴンが
limited.
少ししか出ないハードだと
And if it is a hardware that has very few
視
polygons,
野角っていう角度を
the eye vision perspective has to be widened in 3D.
今のゲームはこう人間の目に自
Today's
然な
game is
その
natural
視野角で作るんだけ
in
ど
the vision
当
perspective
時の
of
ゲームは
human eye.
ポリゴンが少ないん
But
で視野角を
because there are
広げ
few
て
polygons, we had to
で視
expand
野角を
the
広げると
vision
スピード感がどんどん上
perspective.
がっちゃう
And
今の話
the
は
more you do
バーチャルレー
that,
シングの話でしたか。バーチャルレーシングは6000枚出せたでしょ。
but you had 6,000 polygons for virtual racing.
18万ポリゴンper
あ
second
だから
180,000
出るまで記録だったと思います。
So it was a record.
でも最初
クリエイターとして少なかったっていう。
As a creator, you're saying you
最
wanted
初
more.
300ポリゴンしか出なかった
We only had 300 polygons, the model, the first model sample.
So let's go to this side of the room.
Okay, I'm one of the few lucky people who played sci-fi back when he was still at Sega. I had an interview with Mr. Suzuki, and back then he told me that he liked to push the envelope, explore new kinds of control, and explore hardware that was more powerful than anything else. How does he go from that to social games?
サイファイ実際やったことがあります。
あ
ユウさんのオフィスで、はい、すごいものだと思いました。でそこから、なんでしょう、牧場系のゲーム
Were you going to go to a ranch sort type of game and
牧場系ってファームビルとか SNS と
SNS, Farm
サンシャ
Bill,
イン牧場
Sunshine
大
Ranch,
丈夫
that
です
sort of thing?
大丈夫
クリエイターとしてどう思ってます？
How do you think as a
でも
creator, is that a way to go?
やっぱり新しい技術だと思ってますね
I think that's a new technology
だから
network
面
is,
白いと思ってます
and I think it's going to be fun,
興味
interesting.
深いと思いますね
I look forward to it.
ネットワーク
Networking.
どこが
みんなと
What about network?
つながる
That you hitch on, you have relations
い
with
や
many
本当に大
people.
きな92年に
In 1992,
ポンっていうのが
there was
出て
there was
ポンって
Pawn,
いうゲームが出て
Game you
2D の
remember?
時代があって
and then you had
3D の時代があ
2D,
って
and then came the
今ネットワーク
3D.
のまた新しい
And
マー
now
ケットが出て
we are creating a new market for
やっぱり
networking.
まあ今はこうちっちゃいやつでやるからちょ
So
っと
You know, it's a
画質も悪い
small
けど
and the pixel is not good, but in next 2-3 years, I think networking game is going to come up with something
一
great.
番面白いかなってちょっと思ってますね
I think it's going to be the most interesting.
のゲーム。
Smartphone games,
今企画してます
I'm planning, yeah. I'm working on it.
Nintendo の 3DS とね。
Nintendo 3DS and Sony's NGP. Are you interested in those?
任天堂の
3DS
うん
聞いたことがありますか？
Nintendo 3DS, have you heard of it? I've seen it.
でもソニーの NGP
Sony's
あ
NGP.
れでしょ知ってる知ってる
興味あ
I
り
know
ますか？
about it. Are you
う
interested?
ん興味ありますよ
I am interested, yeah.
I think this is the toughest interview I've ever done.
こんな難しいインタ
All
ビュー。
right, let's go to this side of the room.
Hi, I wanted to ask just in general, anything that Yu-san could tell us about Super Hang-On?
Super Hang-On ありましたか？スーパーハンゴン。
スーパーハンゴンは
Super Hang-On.
僕が 僕がディレクションしてやってないですね。
I wasn't the director. I didn't give any
ハンゴンシリー
direction.
ズ
Hang-on
いろいろ
series
なんとかターボとかなんとか
and something
いろいろあって
Targo,
そ
they
れは
were,
僕がプロデュースはしている。
I produced them, but I didn't give the direction.
スーパーファン、誰にやらしたか、三船かなんかにやらした。
I think I gave it to Mifune to work it out. Somebody like him.
All right, we'll go to this side of the room.
Hello. You've worked on many arcade games. I personally have fond memories of playing Virtua Fighter 2 on the arcade as a little kid. I was wondering, I don't know how it is in Japan, but in this country, for the most part, arcades are kind of fallen on the sidelines. What's your opinion on that, or how do you feel?
アメリカではね、多分80年代
In the US in 1980s, arcade business became well diminished. But in Japan, it was successful in the 80s and 90s. Yes, we had a very flourishing business in Japan. Maybe $1 or a quarter, 100 yen or 25 yen, which is about $1 or a quarter. You had pretty good income and you were able to do many different things. So what's the difference as a creator? Do you want to create something expensive or the income was okay in the US? In the US also. Well, of course, in Japan we were more advantageous. However, the moving cabinet, I think, to use body and you feel the move. I think it was very refreshing in the US. I think back then, I think it was doing quite good. And how about
arcade business?
Now?
今シュリンクして日本でも
in Japan it's shrinking too. Please explain that to them then. In Japan currently, I think all over the world, arcade location business is shrinking gradually. And it is really a tough time.
ただ
However, compared to the past, I think there are so many things, so many options, many different things to do. PC and internet and various locations. You can play so many different things and so many options available. And so you don't have to go to arcade and you can have fun. You don't have to go to a game center. You can have a good time. And that's why not like in the past, I think it would be very difficult to come back in a big way like the past. However, arcade, many people come together in one location. So people come to the game center and face to face. If you come up with a game like that, I think that would do a good job for the game center type of applications or games.
But we only people who are now standing in any order.
Several years ago, I read about reports saying that there was an MMO version of Shenmue being developed, and it's called Shenmue Online, and later it was cancelled. So what is the reason behind that?
Shenmue Online ありましたか？
Shenmue Online はね、作ってまして、
Well, we were creating that.
ちょうど
And
なんか一緒にパートナ
it just
ーも決ま
happens
っ
to
てやる
be
ぞ
we
決まりそうだったんです
had
けど、
partners too, and
リ
we
ー
were
マン
able
ショックがあっ
to
て、
go for it. However, because of the Lehman shock, well, it just disappeared in
いつか
the
やりたいですね。
sunset. Well, of course, we want to do it sometime,
Yes, we
someday.
have 3 more.
Okay, first can I say thank you for creating many of the games that defined my childhood and that of, I'm sure, many other people in this room. I wanted to ask about Space Harrier.
Thank you so much.
As for Space Harrier, while many other games like Outrun and Hang On were set in the real world, Space Harrier had one-eyed woolly mammoths, giant mushrooms, and big robots. What was the design process, and how did somebody decide that this was the game that we were making?
そう、スペースハリアーやっぱり他のゲームと全然違います。スペースハリアーはね、
Space Harrier is totally different. Anything was available, but other games,
どのようなこと
there was a role that was defined. Well, Space Harrier, the memory was very limited. The hardware memory was very limited. That's why, for example, this shape, it had to be in the same shape. For example, mushroom, you could see the same view, right? If there are some squares, then the memory, it eats up a lot of memory. So a huge mushroom was the most appropriate because it didn't consume too much memory. And so we introduced, from that perspective, less memory consuming items were introduced, and then the game became like that.
Pole position はね、200K。
Pole position was 200K, and what I liked was a never-ending story. The film, the movie, never-ending story. There was something funny thing was flying around, and it was so fantasy-like, and also Space Cobra. That was an animation in Japan. And your hand becomes morphed and it becomes a gun. That was an animation, right? The cartoon. Yes, that's right. The Space Cobra. There were three things that I liked, and then I combined all those notions. Oh, also one more thing. That world image. There was a movie, Avatar, right? It recently became a big hit, mega hit. And James Cameron's Avatar. In that movie, Roger Dean. Well, in the past there was a Yes, a rock band that was a fantasy-like picture for the album cover. And the Roger Dean's fantasy world I really liked, and so Never-Ending Story and also Roger Dean and the Space Cobra, those are the things that became together, and then it became
Finally, we have Yusan talking like a game creator. All right, last question.
Okay. I was wondering to what extent Toshihiro Nagoshi was involved with Shenmue, because for a lot of people, the Yakuza series is a spiritual successor to Shenmue.
Question of who was involved?
Toshihiro Nagoshi.
Nagoshi-san, Shenmueに入ってましたか?
Was Mr. Nagoshi involved in Shenmue? Well, Mr. Nagoshi, he was assisting at the end a little bit.
All right, and on that note, thank you very much for coming today.